It's time to start recognizing transgenderism as a mental disorder. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. It used to be that men who thought they should be women and women who thought they should be men, males who thought that they could be females simply by wearing different clothing or undergoing medical procedures, and women who thought similarly that they could change their God-ordained biological sexes by will, by surgery, by prescription. That used to be called a psychological disorder. Gender dysphoria was a recognized psychological disorder, and now to call out transgenderism as rooted in psychological disorder is something that is regarded as completely taboo. Even today's medical professionals won't touch that with a 10-foot pole. And yet, we have now, just in recent hours, identified the shooter, the now dead shooter, shot by police, of the 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults at the Christian-based school in Nashville, as a woman who pretended to be a man and who wanted to be a man. Gender dysphoria. It's a mental issue. It's a psychological issue. This woman, Audrey Hale, 28 years old, now dead, reportedly, according to police reports, according to media reports, suffered severe enough depression that she told a friend or mentioned to a friend on several occasions that she was suicidal. And one of her last notes to this friend before she went into Covenant Christian School in Tennessee, the Covenant School, a private Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee, before she went in and shot up the school and killed 6 people, alerted this friend that something bad was going to happen. It was a final note that she was going to die that day. So she knew, and police said she had a manifesto. She had designs and drawings and a strategy written up about her plans to actually go to this Christian school, as well as another one. But the other one she chose not to go to because there was too much security presence. So she went to this Covenant school in Nashville, Tennessee, which was locked but did not have an armed security guard on the premises that day, busted through the glass on the doors, went in and shot up the school, killed 6, and in a matter of minutes, to great credit to the Nashville police officers who responded to the scene, in a matter of minutes, she was dead, shot by 2 of the officers. So kudos for the officers for reacting and responding that quickly. Unlike other school shootings we've seen where officers just stand idly, congregating outside, biting their nails, wondering what to do. Nashville officers, kudos to them for doing what they were trained to do, right? Protect the innocent. But transgender dysphoria is something that has become normalized in society now, and you're not allowed to call out gender dysphoria, You're not allowed to call out gender dysphoria as a psychological disorder. You're not allowed to criticize the transgender community for promoting the normalization of what is indeed abnormal. And the medical community has happily jumped on board with this activist campaign to normalize something that is completely abnormal. And before I get more into that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, the online platform for your faith-based podcasts, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. Just go to washingtontimes.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, find the newsletter section, find my name, click on it, and sign up for my Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays newsletters. It comes out right to your email box, contains all the commentaries that I write all day long at the Washington Times, as well as my twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcasts, which you can also get Spotify, and so forth, wherever fine podcasts are offered. Transgenderism. Let's look at some of these statistics. A few years ago, UCLA School of Law, Williams Institute, performed this data and demographic survey of the LGBT community. Didn't even have the Q at the time. LGBT data and demographics is the title of this report. As far as proportion of the population goes, apparently in America at this time, 4.5% of the United States, males and females of the United States, adults and teens, identified as LGBT. And there are some states where this particular community feels more at home than in other states. If you look at the map, it just seems like the Northeast is dominated by those who feel comfortable identifying as LGBT. The West Coast, as you can imagine, feels comfortable, and plenty in a couple of the southern states, including Florida. If you look at a state-by-state look at this, the District of Columbia touts a 9.8% LGBT population. So according to Williams Institute, which performed this survey, 9.8% of the entire population of America's capital city, the District of Columbia, identify as LGBT. That's pretty high, almost 10%. It's probably more now. The next state, the next highest is Oregon, 5.6%, Nevada, Massachusetts, California, in order. Those are the states with the highest percentage of LGBT populations. And how did they determine that? Well, LGBT identity is based on response to the question, do you personally identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender? That's word for word from the poll here, from what Williams Institute reports at the bottom of its survey. And guess what? LGBTQ youth, according to Business Insider, in a headline and a study from a couple of years ago, LGBTQ youth are 120% more likely to experience homelessness than heterosexual youth. That comes from a study from Voices of Youth Count, an initiative from the University of Chicago. 70% of LGBTQ youth said they experienced poor mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. 70% of this particular community acknowledged, told survey questioners themselves that they experienced poor mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. Geez, the teachers' unions really care nothing about children, right? They really don't. The Democrats that advanced the lockdowns on liberties and the seizures of individual liberties, using COVID fears as justification, really care nothing about those in America with mental health issues already. Mental health issues that grew so extreme under the COVID lockdowns that the victims themselves said that they had mental health issues. The Trevor Project, Business Insider wrote, found that the pandemic in 2020 made the living situation for 80% of LGBTQ youth more stressful, leading to mental health issues. I would say leading to more mental health issues is the more correct way to phrase that, because let's get back to the basic premise here. It's time to acknowledge once again, that gender dysphoria, leading to transgenderism, leading to the idea that you can choose your own sex and change your own sex at will. It's time to return to the time when that is openly acknowledged as a mental health issue. It's not doing kindness to those with mental health issues to pretend that they don't have mental health issues. It's unkind to the sufferer of the mental health issue, but it's also dangerous, perilous, deceptive to the larger community, to the community at large, who then are put in the position of having to play along with the deception or to fight the deception but become ostracized by a society that has then become brainwashed and forced into accepting the abnormal as normal. It only, down the line, works to compound the mental health issue of the victim. The victim of the mental health issue is constantly being told, oh, you don't have a mental health issue. You're fine. You're fine. But guess what? You can't live a life of lie and come out fine on the end. It doesn't work that way. You can't fight God. You can't win in a fight against God. I suppose you can try and fight God, but you're not going to win. You can't fight natural truths. You can't fight truthful biology and win in the end. And pretending to the victims of these mental disorders who try and fight God, try and fight the natural order of things, pretending that they can and that there's no problem in doing that it's healthy for them, is such a cruel disservice to the victim. But also just, it creates chaos in all of society. And therein lies the answer to what's going on right here. What's going on with this entire LGBTQ agenda. It's a strategic design of the left used to create the necessary chaos and upheaval in society to justify the government, meaning the left, the leftists in government, the Democrats in government, to come in, to swoop in, to storm in and pretend to have the solution to calm society. By tearing down the family unit, traditional family unit, the unit that has been ordained, created, defined by God, leftists know that they are ultimately tearing down society and creating such chaos, such crisis in communities that people desperate for calm, desperate for a society that actually functions again, will turn to whatever solution they can to bring back a normal society, an operating society. And that's where Democrats thrive. They thrive in the chaos because they successfully sell, with their partners in the media, the idea that only big government can provide the solutions. All that goes on with the transgender community is an evil, wicked design of the left to rebel against God as a means of stealing individual liberties and seizing power to control all of society. I have a guest today. His name is Ryan Bomberger. He, along with his wife, run the Radiance Foundation, a faith-based 501c3 nonprofit. And he and his wife, Bethany, have just written this new book, She Is She, celebrating womanhood, femininity, the actual traditional roles girls and women play in society. What a radical idea. Ryan, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
It's great to be here with you.
So you and your wife, Bethany, just wrote this book, She Is She, which the title alone would seem radical to some. Do you think that you would ever come to a time in America where writing about how women are women would be radical?
Not at all. I mean, we kind controversial statement to say that she is she.
Yeah, the left is really racing ahead with its LGBTQ agenda. And I have to say, even I'm shocked. As cynical as I can get watching the news and being part of the news, I'm shocked at how fast they have spread their message and rod.
Well, they're helped by a lot of different institutions. I mean, they're helped by fake news. They're helped by public school system, which my wife was a teacher for 13 years in that system. They're helped by, academia. They're helped by Hollywood and the music industry. So there are all these institutions that are just flooding their content with this toxic ideology. And it's not surprising. And by the way, we live in Loudoun County, Virginia, so you may have heard of Loudoun County.
Yes.
And so this is happening right here in our schools, literally the school in our backyard, Woodgrove High School.
And, they're helped by Chelsea Clinton, who has a new book of her own.
Yes, where she celebrates a man who divorced his wife, left her life in tatters, and then took an award that's actually meant for a woman and is now encouraging body mutilating surgeries on children. So that's the kind of person that Chelsea Clinton thinks that young girls should emulate.
Right, and you're speaking about Rachel Levine, HHS director, yes? Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Another irony there, too.
So do you see this LGBTQ agenda, including transgenderism and mutilation of our children undergoing sex surgeries, do you see this as a trend, or do you see this as a worrisome future for America?
I think it's worrisome, even if it's not a trend, even if it is a trend, because just one life destroyed by this is one too many. You see these detransitioner stories, and they're heartbreaking. Chloe Cole is just one of many young girls who are like, wait a minute, why was I lied to? I'm a father of 4. I have 2 beautiful girls, two boys. They're all awesome. I love them. I never want them to be subject to this kind of toxic ideology, to somehow question the very core of their being. Am I a boy? Am I a girl? Of course, we're made male and female. As a Christian, that's foundational. But also someone who actually believes in basic biology,
right.
We know that there are males and there are females, and that is encoded in our DNA from the point of fertilization. But this is incredibly dangerous. We're still living through the consequences, you could say, of the aftermath of the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s. What in the world is going to happen even just a few years from now from some of this irreparable damage that's being done to children?
Let's talk about that Christian angle for a second, because Bold and Blunt is the Christian conservative worldview. I look at what's going on in this transgender movement, especially the targeting of youth, the most innocent and most vulnerable, right? I look at it as pure evil and child abuse, and ultimately a rebellion against God. Am I wrong there?
Oh, it is complete rebellion against God. And that never goes well when we decide that, oh, you know what, God, you created this design, but we're going to deviate from it. And it never goes well when we do that. And just to give you a little bit of my background, I'm from an adoptive family of 15. We're 13 of us, 13 kids, 10 of us were adopted. And several of my siblings were adopted out of horrific situations where there was sexual abuse. And when you think about all of this transgenderism and all this LGBT ideology that just wants to throw glitter and rainbow at things and not look at the origin of things, not look at the trauma that led many to that state, it blows my mind. I thank God that I have parents who loved the Lord and loved us through a lot of our difficulties to actually change the trajectory of our lives. But instead, we live in a culture that now, all of a sudden, children are the authority in all things. Are you kidding me? My son loved Go Diego Go, and he thought he was a panther for the longest time. You're not a panther, but you can run like one, I guess. But we don't give in to all the whims of our children, but yet this is what the the acronym that never ends,
right.
LGBTQ XYZ ideology and that form of activism wants us to do, that somehow now children are the authority and strangers are the people you confide in.
how would you describe those who actually truly believe that they are doing a good in allowing children to change their sexes, so to speak, through surgery and medical procedures? Do you think the majority of those on that side of the argument, on that side of the issue, are well-meaning, but just, well-meaning, well-intentioned, but just wrong? Or do you see the majority of the make up that side as just pure evil?
I see a lot of it as pure evil. Yes, I do believe that there are some people who are emotionally pulled and want to act out in compassion, but it's very misdirected compassion. First of all, lying is not compassionate. Lying is not kind. And for those on the other side, particularly medical professionals who know better, who know the science, who know that they're twisting words and know that they're, misconstruing studies, they know that they're doing wrong. And the ones who, Vanderbilt University, where they were bragging about the exorbitant costs of these surgeries and how much money they could pull in, straight up evil. They have no excuse. And that's why those of us who know, well, this is just common sense stuff, we have to actually stand up and defend the vulnerable. And the vulnerable are children, particularly those in public schools that are being inundated on a daily basis with this propaganda to somehow introduce the confusion in the first place. We're not even talking about genuine gender dysphoria. When you have just an insane amount of cases of sudden onset of gender dysphoria in entire groups of friends, come on, we know that this is because of propaganda. And we know that it is evil that is pushing this ideology to somehow have these kids question themselves and lead them into a lifetime of drug addiction and body mutilating surgeries. That's not love. That's not compassion.
And it also leads society down a path of having to play into the deception or be ostracized or criticized. For instance, boys who want to be called by female pronouns and teachers that refuse to, or adults who refuse to, are criticized or condemned or even fired. It just forces society to play along with this entire lie.
Well, it does. In fact, I had a friend who, at one of the school board meetings here at Loudoun County Public Schools, who was a phys ed teacher, and he said he loves his students too much. He loves them too much to call a boy a girl and a girl a boy. And what happened to him? He was fired the next day. He studied physiology. He knows the science behind it. His name is Tanner Cross. He had to be reinstated to his job by a state judge and then reaffirmed by the Supreme Court. This is insane. I mean, and you have several teachers who've been fired here in Virginia because of refusing to have their speech compelled. That's one of the dynamics that are so insane about this LGBT activism, in that they want to not only, force everybody to, it's not about tolerance, but to conform, but they want you to promote it. And they want you to adopt fake speech. I mean, these aren't even real pronouns. They want forced speech, and that is obviously a complete violation of the First Amendment, but it's a complete violation of common sense. That's really what it boils down to. But as with all things with social movements, the quest is for power, and that's exactly what's happening. They're exerting power over so many people who are so afraid to speak out and to just speak common sense and think that, I'm just being, I'm offering pronoun hospitality. No, you're not. You're actually, one, you're losing your dignity because you're using made up words, and you're saying things that are so obviously not true, and you're not aiding that child who is now in the midst of this kind of confusion that has been pushed on him or her from pretty much every angle, even some churches, to be honest.
I want to talk about your book, She is She, but I just want to ask you a couple other questions before that. Are you surprised at how fast this LGBTQ agenda, including the medical sex change of youth, are you surprised at how fast this movement has sped up just in recent months?
I think when you look at, like George Bonnet does a lot of studies about religion, and the most recent study showed that only 4% of American adults have the biblical worldview. That downward spiral has been happening, simultaneously. So I'm not actually surprised. You have even Christians who have no sense of what the Word of God says. So I guess I'm not shocked, but I am deeply concerned about it all, because in the end, you're talking about ruined lives, whether they're children, whether they're adults. And we just have to slow this down and say, wait a minute, come on, let's look at what's really going on, and let's look at what true compassion looks like. For those who are confused, there is counseling. And many people just emerge out of this confusion. Many children. I mean, there are some percentages, some studies that show even upwards of 90% that exit this kind of confusion. But yet, this is being foisted on our entire society. And it is shocking to see the total capitulation of politicians, of, as I mentioned, before, churches, some pastors. Well, we want to be inclusive. No, how about you want to be truthful? You want to be loving. And so I see this disastrous sort of effect on our society, this rapid downward spiral, and this total caving in to an ideology that even 10 years ago, people would have been like, what? Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Why are you writing a book called She is She? That's absurd. Well, it's 2023, and we need to reintroduce basic truths.
I'm glad you brought up that Barna survey, that 4% of American adults are the only ones who really have a biblical worldview any longer, because I actually do think, and I agree with you, that that's the key to what's taking place here. So with that in mind, and before we talk about She is She, your excellent new book, with that in mind, do you see any sort of hope or optimism for American society and culture to turn back to more biblical times?
I'm always hopeful. When you're a Christian, you serve the God of hope. So I have to be hopeful. It's why my wife, Bethany, and I do the work we do through the Radiance Foundation, because we are hopeful. One of our taglines is illuminate, educate, and motivate. And we do what we do because we know that people's hearts and minds can be changed. And that there's such a there's a desperation for what is true out there. Even though we see, superficially this aversion to truth, we have a society and a culture that's so desperate to know the truth. And, as Christians, we're the ones who know it. And oftentimes, while the world is out there screaming a lie, we're the ones who are being quiet. And it should be the exact opposite. We should be screaming that truth. Well, maybe not screaming it, saying it lovingly, but saying it, loudly. While the other side is scrambling so much, the lost are scrambling so much, trying to figure all this out. And we see these heightened cases of people with anxiety and depression, especially post-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. There is a desperation to want to know, why am I here? Why do I exist? What is the truth? And as a Christian, that I want my life to just be filled with nonstop effort to show that, not just to speak it, but to live it.
So I imagine that's part of the motivating factor that led you and your wife, Bethany, to write this new book, She is She. What are the biggest takeaways from that book?
Well, we really just celebrate undeniable, biological, beautiful her. It's awesome to be a girl. Not that I know personally, because I'm a guy, but it's awesome. I have 6 sisters. I have an amazing mama. I have an amazing wife, my favorite woman on the planet. She knows what a woman is. So the takeaway is celebrating femininity, celebrating the gift of motherhood, and what that means is celebrating all the things that women can become. And when you have a culture that's bombarded right now that everything and anyone can be a woman, we've lost sight of something so simple yet so profound. None of us would even be here without a woman, without a mother. And so we love celebrating that. And it's an adorably illustrated children's book. And we believe, the other side understands they target young children to reach them with all kinds of issues. Well, this is for kids 2 to 8, and it can be even for older children as well. But it really just communicates these simple truths with these beautiful illustrations and counters so much of that toxicity that is so pervasive in our culture right now.
And who would have thought it? She is She, one of the most controversial books of probably the next year or so, but I hope people pick up a copy. Ryan Bomberger, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on Bold and Blunt, and best of wishes with the book, She is She.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Very interesting how many today would consider that title, She is She, to be radical. That's the sign of the times that we're living in right now. I want to thank you for listening. I want to remind you that if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, and of course, wherever fine podcasts are offered. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.